The clock ticked like a heartbeat that refused to rest. Martha stood in the kitchen, holding a mug that had gone cold long ago. The air felt heavy, thick with yesterday's echoes. Outside, the wind brushed the window, whispering to no one. Inside, silence stretched like an endless hallway. She used to love Sunday's pancakes sizzling, laughter bouncing off the walls, the radio playing songs her kids called old. Now, the house was an echo chamber of memories. The kitchen smelled of stillness, not syrup. Even her footsteps sounded foreign, like a stranger living her life. She stared at the empty table and felt time collapse. Her husband had left early for another urgent meeting. Martha didn't ask anymore. She had stopped asking years ago. The space between them had become polite, predictable, hollow. Sometimes she wondered if silence could be louder than words. That Sunday, it screamed. She walked to the living room and turned on the TV just to drown the quiet. The screen glowed, faces moving, voices clashing, none of them real. She muted it again. The false comfort dissolved, leaving the hum of the refrigerator as the only companion. It sounded like loneliness breathing. Martha sank into the couch, clutching a pillow that still carried her daughter's perfume. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the last time someone called her name with warmth. Her chest tightened. The clock ticked again, patient, cruel, steady, each second a reminder. She was waiting for nothing. Outside, a church bell rang. Muffled by distance, she imagined families walking together, laughter spilling over sidewalks. She wondered what it felt like to belong again, to have noise that meant love, not ghosts. The thought made her eyes burn. When she opened the window for air, a gust entered and brushed her hair like a kind hand. The wind carried a faint hum, almost a tone. She listened without meaning to, and for the first time that morning, something inside her stirred, fragile but alive. The smell of old coffee lingered as Martha wiped the counter, though it was already spotless. Cleaning was her defense against the ache. Her mind traveled back to mornings when little feet thundered across the floor. Mom, where's my backpack? Mom, pancakes. Every sound was music then. Now, those melodies existed only in memory. The photos on the wall smiled like ghosts of a past life. Her daughter's graduation cap, her son's baseball trophy, artifacts of joy suspended in dust. Martha ran her fingers along the frames, whispering, "You were my purpose." The silence answered softly. And now, her husband's office door was closed. As always, she used to knock, bring him coffee, try to start conversations that never began. Years of polite distance had eroded the warmth between them. The house still held their history, but not their marriage. It was a museum of almosts. Martha walked outside, needing air that didn't feel recycled by regret. The sun was kind, but the breeze was sharp. She sat on the porch, her favorite place when the world felt too small. The creak of the wooden step beneath her was oddly comforting, proof that something still responded when she moved. Across the street, the neighbors' children played with chalk, their laughter slicing through her solitude. Martha smiled, then frowned. It hurt to watch life continue without her. She closed her eyes and let the wind brush against her face. Somewhere, faintly, she heard a bird's note, a reminder that sound could still heal. That afternoon, she found an old music box in the attic. The tune was slow, haunting, familiar. She let it play until it stopped. The silence after it somehow louder. She wound it again, over and over, craving the company of sound. Even sorrow was better than nothing. As the sun dipped behind the maple trees, Martha sat still, watching the golden light fade into gray. The day ended without words, without noise, but the music box's echo stayed with her, a small, persistent hum that refused to die. It happened without thought. She was watering her plants on the porch, humming softly, when her tune drifted across the fence. The sound rose and fell like a shy bird learning to fly. She didn't notice the window open next door, didn't see Henry, her elderly neighbor, listening. When she turned to go inside, Henry called out, "That's a beautiful melody, Martha." She froze, startled. Compliments were foreign currency these days. "Oh, that just noise," she said, embarrassed. But Henry shook his head, smiling. "Noise? No, that was peace." His words followed her inside like sunlight sneaking through curtains. She sat at the kitchen table, pulse quickening for no reason she could name. Her voice, beautiful. It seemed absurd. But as she replayed the moment in her mind, she realized she'd felt something rare, presence. For once, she had been heard. That night, she couldn't sleep. The melody lingered in her head like an unanswered question. She got up, found her phone, and pressed record. Outside, The wind rustled through the trees. Inside, her voice trembled, unsure but pure. She sang a few lines of nothing, and it felt like everything. When she listened back, her breath caught. The sound was imperfect, yet strangely moving. It carried warmth, truth, vulnerability. It sounded alive. Martha smiled for the first time in days, whispering, "Maybe Henry's right." Then she saved the file, naming it Sunday. As dawn crept in, she realized she had created something, not perfect, not planned, but hers. The idea that beauty could bloom from loneliness felt revolutionary. For the first time in years, she looked forward to waking up. Monday arrived, gray and cold, but Martha felt a strange excitement hum beneath the surface. After breakfast, she opened the recording app again. The file name glowed, Sunday.mp3. She pressed play, closed her eyes, and listened. The sound wrapped around her like a fragile hug. She decided to add more. She filled a glass with water, tapped it gently with a spoon, capturing the delicate chime. The kettle hissed in the background. The floor creaked. Her breath joined in rhythm. It was ordinary life turned into music. Imperfect, intimate, real. When she listened again, tears surprised her. The sounds she'd ignored for years were suddenly precious. The house wasn't silent. She simply hadn't been listening. Each creak, each sigh, each whisper was proof that life still pulsed inside those walls. The silence had never been empty. It had been waiting. Martha recorded all afternoon, experimenting like a child with crayons. She sang snippets of lullabies, layered the ticking clock, even added the hum of the refrigerator. What emerged was not a song but a feeling, one she couldn't name, but it felt like healing. That evening, she sent the track to Henry with a shy note. "You said it sounded like peace. Here's more of it." She doubted he'd reply, but 5 minutes later, a message came. "This made me cry. Martha, thank you for reminding me that sound is alive." Her chest ached, but this time, it was good. She made tea and sat by the window, watching dusk settle like soft music. The world outside was the same. Cars, wind, shadows, but she was not. Something small had begun to awaken inside her, like the first note of a song that might never end. That night, she fell asleep to her own recording, smiling faintly. The house still creaked, the wind still whispered, and for the first time, she welcomed every sound. Monday arrived, gray and cold, but Martha felt a strange excitement hum beneath the surface. After breakfast, she opened the recording app again. The file name glowed, Sunday.mp3. She pressed play, closed her eyes, and listened. The sound wrapped around her like a fragile hug. She decided to add more. She filled a glass with water, tapped it gently with a spoon, capturing the delicate chime. The kettle hissed in the background. The floor creaked. Her breath joined in rhythm. It was ordinary life turned into music. Imperfect, intimate, real. When she listened again, tears surprised her. The sounds she'd ignored for years were suddenly precious. The house wasn't silent. She simply hadn't been listening. Each creak, each sigh, each whisper was proof that life still pulsed inside those walls. The silence had never been empty. It had been waiting. Martha recorded all afternoon, experimenting like a child with crayons. She sang snippets of lullabies, layered the ticking clock, even added the hum of the refrigerator. What emerged was not a song but a feeling, one she couldn't name, but it felt like healing. That evening, she sent the track to Henry with a shy note. "You said it sounded like peace. Here's more of it." She doubted he'd reply, but 5 minutes later, a message came. "This made me cry. Martha, thank you for reminding me that sound is alive." Her chest ached, but this time, it was good. She made tea and sat by the window, watching dusk settle like soft music. The world outside was the same. Cars, wind, shadows, but she was not. Something small had begun to awaken inside her, like the first note of a song that might never end. That night, she fell asleep to her own recording, smiling faintly. The house still creaked, the wind still whispered, and for the first time, she welcomed every sound. By Thursday, Martha had turned her kitchen into a tiny studio. Towels hung on chairs for soundproofing, the phone balanced on a jar. She laughed at herself, a 50-year-old woman chasing sounds like fireflies, but it made her feel alive again. The house buzzed with small miracles. She began collecting noises, the whistle of the kettle, the squeak of the floorboard, the rhythmic hum of the dryer. Each sound carried a memory, breakfasts, arguments, laughter. She layered them together, forming audio letters to her past. It felt like conversation after years of silence. She named the new piece Morning Light. It was simple, full of breath and warmth. When she played it back, Something inside her melted. The song wasn't about music. It was about presence, about hearing the world that had never stopped speaking. She whispered, "I'm still here," and believed it. Henry stopped by with cookies and asked to hear her latest work. She played it softly, nervous. When the final note faded, he nodded slowly. "You're telling stories without words," he said. "People need that." Martha blushed, unsure how to accept praise that felt too large. That night, she posted Morning Light anonymously online. No expectations, just curiosity. Before bed, one comment appeared. "This made me cry. I felt my grandmother's kitchen." Martha stared at the screen, trembling. Her small world had just reached someone else's heart. She walked to the window, moonlight spilling across the floorboards. The house no longer felt like a tomb. It breathed with her. It sang. The silence of Sunday had transformed into the music of living, and she wasn't ready for it to stop. Martha woke up early, the phone buzzing on the counter. A message blinked from Mrs. Parker, her quiet neighbor who'd recently lost her husband. "Could you make one of your sound things for my grandson's birthday?" Martha hesitated, unsure, but her heart whispered yes. She spent the morning recording the chirp of birds, the laughter of children outside, and a soft hum that carried warmth. Her voice trembled as she sang a gentle tune, simple but full of feeling. When she played it back, the sounds felt alive, like love disguised as sound waves. Delivering it that afternoon, she felt her pulse race. Mrs. Parker listened, eyes glistening. "It sounds like hope," she whispered. Martha stood frozen, unsure whether to smile or cry. No one had ever called something she made hope before. It changed her. Back home, she stared at her phone in awe. That one small act had filled her chest with light. The silence that once suffocated her now felt generous, full of possibilities. "Maybe I can do this," she said softly, as if testing her own courage. She created a folder titled Commissions, though she laughed at the word. The idea of being an artist felt too big for her life. Still, she labeled it carefully, a promise to herself. Every label, every note, was a seed. She just didn't know what would grow. That evening, as dusk painted the kitchen gold, she listened to the finished piece again. It carried joy and memory together, wrapped in gentle imperfection. Martha closed her eyes and smiled. She'd given someone peace, and in doing so, found a piece of her own. When she finally went to bed, the house wasn't quiet anymore. It hummed with something invisible and kind, a music that asked for nothing but to be heard. The next step scared her more than she wanted to admit. She sat at her desk, staring at the glowing screen. The Create Account button felt heavier than any decision she'd made in years. What if no one cared? What if they laughed? But silence had taught her, doing nothing hurt more. She named her page Sound Letters by Martha. The name felt strange on her tongue, both personal and distant. She uploaded Morning Light and the New Hope song. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Then she pressed post. The moment passed in a breath. The first day, nothing. The second day, nothing again. She tried not to check, but failed. On the third night, just before giving up, a notification appeared. One sale. A stranger had ordered a custom recording. Martha gasped, hand to her mouth. Someone wanted her sound. She spent hours crafting it. A melody made of rain, a heartbeat like rhythm from her washing machine, her voice humming low. She listened 100 times before sending it. It felt like sending her heart wrapped in sound. The fear was real, but so was the thrill. The customer's reply came the next morning. "I played it for my wife. We cried together. Thank you." Martha read the words over and over, tears streaming down her face. Someone's tears were proof that she had reached them. Her silence had become connection. That night, she lit a candle by the window, as if thanking the stars for listening. The world outside glowed faintly, breathing with her rhythm. For the first time, she realized sound could be prayer, and she had just learned how to pray again. She closed the laptop, her reflection faint in the dark screen. "You did it," she whispered to herself, and for once, she believed it. The next commission arrived with a trembling message. "Could you make a recording in memory of my wife?" Her name was Clara. Martha froze, reading it twice. Grief, raw, sacred, heavy. She almost said no, but something deeper urged her to try. She gathered sounds like memories, the hush of the wind through pine trees, the soft crackle of fire, a distant lullaby. Each note carried warmth, sorrow, and tenderness. When she sang, her voice broke halfway through, and she didn't fix it. The imperfection made it real. Halfway into the night, she finished the piece and named it for Clara. Listening back, she felt tears slip down her cheeks. It wasn't just music anymore, it was communion between the living and the lost. Her pain mingled with a stranger's and turned into beauty. She hesitated before sending it. Her finger hovered above the screen. Then she whispered, "For both of us," and pressed send. The message went out like a whisper into the world, fragile but brave. Silence followed, heavy with anticipation. The reply came hours later. It sounded like she was here again. Martha covered her face, shaking. It was the greatest compliment she could imagine. Somehow, her loneliness had become a bridge for someone else's love. She stepped outside, barefoot on the cold porch. The moonlight wrapped her like a blanket. The world was quiet, but not empty. Every sound, the wind, the leaves, her heartbeat felt like gratitude. Martha whispered into the night, "Thank you, Clara." And in the stillness, she could almost hear an answer. A week later, she woke to find her phone buzzing on. Her little video, a clip of her mixing sounds at the kitchen table, had gone viral in the local community. Comments poured in. "This healed me. I play your tracks to fall asleep. You make silence sing." Martha stared, trembling. Excitement and panic danced inside her chest. Orders multiplied. Messages flooded in, each one more heartfelt than the last. She couldn't keep up, but she didn't want to stop. The world had found her, and she wasn't invisible anymore. Henry came by with a grin. "You're famous now, Martha," he teased. She laughed nervously, brushing him off. Fame wasn't what she wanted. She just wanted to matter. But even joy carried fear. What if she failed now that people were watching? She worked late into the night, headphones on, kitchen light glowing warm. The world outside faded to black while her small universe pulsed with rhythm. Every sound felt sacred. Every creation, a confession whispered into eternity. Her husband noticed the change. "You're up late again," he said one night, tone uncertain. Martha only smiled. "I'm working," was the first time she'd said that word in years without apology. Something had shifted. The silence between them wasn't as sharp. The next morning, she read another comment. "Your music sounds like healing." She placed a hand over her heart. It was the sentence she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. The ache turned into strength. For the first time in decades, Martha realized she had built something, not from noise, but from stillness, transformed into song. The message arrived out of nowhere. "Martha, it's Ellen," her sister, the one she hadn't spoken to in nearly 10 years. The phone trembled in her hand. Old pain resurfaced, accusations, distance, the silence that followed. But something in her had changed. She decided to answer. Their first call was awkward, full of pauses. Ellen had seen the viral video. "I didn't know you still made music," she said softly. Martha laughed nervously. "I didn't either." The sound of her sister's voice stirred memories she'd buried beneath pride and regret. They talked for an hour, circling around old wounds. Words were careful, fragile, like glass. When Ellen mentioned their mother's passing years ago, Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't ready to talk then," she whispered. "Neither was I," Ellen admitted. Silence followed this time, healing. Over the next weeks, they exchanged messages, photos, little jokes. The distance shrank. Martha sent Ellen one of her recordings, a quiet blend of piano hums and wind chimes. "I made this for you," she wrote. Ellen replied, "It sounds like forgiveness." Martha listened to it again later, realizing her sister was right. The sounds weren't perfect, but they carried peace. The same peace she'd been searching for within herself. Sometimes, reconciliation didn't come with words, only with rhythm and breath. Henry noticed the brightness in her eyes. "You look lighter," he said. She smiled. "I think I'm finally learning how to listen again." He nodded knowingly. That's where healing begins. That night, Martha opened the window, letting the cool air wash over her. The silence outside no longer frightened her. It simply waited, patient, ready to sing again. The invitation came from the local arts center. "Would you perform live?" Martha's heart pounded as she read it. Fear and disbelief collided inside her chest. A performance? Her voice was made for kitchens, not stages. Still, something in her whispered, "Say yes." The night of the event, her hands trembled as she stepped onto the small stage. The lights were warm, too bright, too close, faces blurred in the crowd. She held the microphone like a lifeline, heart echoing louder than the speakers. Then she began to sing. The first notes floated out, clear, soft, then cracked. Panic flooded her. The room tilted. Her breath vanished. She tried again, but her throat closed. The melody fractured into silence. A murmur rippled through the audience. Shame burned through her. She whispered an apology and fled, her heels clicking like thunder down the hallway. Outside, cold air bit her cheeks, mixing with tears. The world spun. She sat on the curb, hugging her knees, whispering, "I can't do this." The echo sounded cruel. That night, she deleted her social pages, shut the laptop, and let the house go quiet again. The silence felt heavier than before, like punishment. Her chest ached where courage had once lived. Maybe it was just luck, she thought. Maybe I was never meant for this. Henry knocked on her door the next morning, but she didn't answer. The music inside her had vanished. All she could hear was the hollow rhythm of regret. She wanted to disappear into the stillness she once feared, because at least it didn't judge her. But deep in that silence, something faint remained, a heartbeat, a whisper, a note waiting to be found again. Henry didn't give up. On the third day, he left a note under her door. Even the wind fails before it sings again. Martha read it 10 times. The words felt like sunlight sneaking through heavy curtains. Maybe failure wasn't the end, maybe it was a pause. That evening, she invited him for tea. The air smelled of cinnamon and apology. They sat in the kitchen where her journey had begun. "I froze," she confessed. "My voice just stopped." Henry smiled gently, then let it rest. Even silence has music, Mofta. He told her about his late wife, how she used to play violin but quit after one bad concert. She thought the world stopped caring, he said softly, but music never leaves us. We just stop hearing it. Martha's eyes filled with tears. She understood now. After he left, she went to her little recording corner. Dust had settled on her microphone. She ran a finger over it like greeting an old friend. "You waited for me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but it was enough. She pressed record and simply breathed. The sound of breath filled the room, uneven, real. She layered it with the soft tick of the clock, the hum of the heater. No singing this time, just sound, honest and alive. When she played it back, it felt like forgiveness, for herself and for her silence. That night, she uploaded it privately, under the title, "Still Here." She didn't expect responses, but one came. "This made me cry. It sounds like the moment before healing." Martha smiled through tears. Someone had heard what words couldn't say. She whispered, "Thank you, Henry." The wind outside rustled, as if answering or maybe applauding. Spring arrived early that year. Flowers burst through the soil like tiny miracles. Martha decided to do something brave again. Not for fame, not for views, but for truth. She sent out invitations. Backyard sound gathering one night. Only her hands shook as she pressed send. The evening came wrapped in golden light. Chairs dotted her lawn, string lights glowing like fireflies. Henry sat in the front row, beaming. Neighbors brought cookies, blankets, and nervous excitement. Martha took a deep breath, microphone in hand. "Thank you for listening," she said. This time, her voice didn't tremble. She began with simple sounds, the whisper of leaves, gentle chimes, the hum of her own breath. Then her voice joined, steady, imperfect, full of life. The music floated into the twilight, wrapping everyone in warmth. Children swayed, couples held hands, tears glimmered. Martha saw faces illuminated by emotion, not screens. Every note felt like release. When she finished, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred, full of heartbeat and awe. Applause erupted. Martha laughed through tears, overwhelmed. Henry stood, clapping the loudest. "You did it," he mouthed. She nodded, heart wide open. The fear that once silenced her was gone. She had turned it into song. Later, she walked through the quiet yard, light swaying gently in the breeze. She whispered, "We made this house, you and me." The walls that had once held sorrow now shimmered with gratitude. That night, Martha fell asleep with her window open, letting the sound of laughter drift in like music that never truly ends. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived, her son's handwriting. Inside, a letter signed by both children. She unfolded it slowly, heart trembling. "Mom," it began, "we saw your concert online. We cried. You made us remember what home sounds like." Martha's hands shook. They wrote about childhood memories, the smell of pancakes, her humming in the kitchen, the warmth that had shaped them. "You taught us to listen," the letter said, "even when we forgot to say thank you." Tears blurred the ink. Martha pressed the paper to her heart. For years, she'd feared she had failed them, that her silence had made her invisible. But now, the words told a different story. She had never stopped being their melody. They had just needed time to hear it again. That night, she recorded a new track called "For My Children." It was gentle and full of light, laughter layered with morning sounds, her soft voice whispering love between the notes. It wasn't for sale, it was a gift. She sent it privately to both of them, no message attached. Hours later, 2 heart emojis appeared in reply. Simple, wordless, perfect. Martha smiled, whispering, "You heard me." Henry stopped by that evening, and she read him the letter. He listened quietly, eyes moist. "That's the best standing ovation," he said. Martha laughed softly. "It really is." The silence that followed felt like applause. The stars outside flickered gently, as if the universe itself was listening and smiling. The morning sun poured through the window like a soft symphony. Martha stood in her kitchen, the same one that once echoed with emptiness. The clock still ticked, the kettle still sang, but everything sounded different now. The silence had turned into peace. She brewed coffee, humming a melody that had no beginning or end. The smell filled the room, blending with the whisper of wind. She didn't need applause or likes anymore. She only needed this, the rhythm of ordinary life made extraordinary by awareness. Outside, the neighborhood was waking. Children's laughter drifted through the air. A dog barked, a door slammed, leaves rustled. Martha smiled. Every sound was part of her orchestra now. She had learned to hear the beauty inside the noise. She walked to the porch and sat where it had all begun. The chair creaked familiarly beneath her. She closed her eyes and listened, not for melodies, but for moments. Everything around her was alive. The silence she'd once feared was now her favorite song. Henry waved from across the street. "Happy Sunday, maestro," he called. Martha laughed, her voice clear and warm. "Happy Sunday, Henry." The wind carried her laughter down the road like music. Inside, her phone buzzed. New orders, new messages, but she didn't rush. She let them wait. Some things deserved stillness first. She poured another cup of coffee and whispered, "Thank you, life, I'm listening." And in that gentle, golden silence, the world answered softly, beautifully, like a song coming home.